Hello everyone, welcome back to another fun-filled lesson of Po Actual Speaking. It is time for lesson 30. We'll be focusing on reading today. You know, the public library is a phenomena. It is a place you can go to find lots of things. It's a paradise for readers, right? You can enhance your smarts, also relieve stress by reading a book. For a lot of people, they like to read before they go to bed because it helps them to relax, right? You can shift your mind from one thing to another, especially if you are under a lot of stress. And if you are a very active person, you can grab a book, sit down, relax, and really find reading to be very soothing. So of course, reading brings us a lot of benefits. Are you an avid reader? Do you not enjoy reading? Well, if you don't read that often or at all, why don't you read? Think about those reasons as we start today's lesson on reading. Okay everyone, are you ready to get started on today's lesson? Once again, we are talking about reading, so let's find out some ways to talk about reading perhaps with, of course, our warm-up segment with the 5 W's and how. Let's begin. Of course, as always, we've got who, our first W category, and you could perhaps brainstorm by asking yourself this question: who, or perhaps which author are you a fan of? So whose book do you read the most? Which author are you a huge fan of? Which writer do you like? Okay, let's move on to who or whose work or works have you read the most? Okay, so perhaps this person can be your favorite author. Even if that's not so, you can read a specific writer or author's book, right? So yeah, think about which works or whose works you've read the most. Let's move on to our what category. What do you like to read? Meaning, what kind of reading material do you enjoy? For example, a lot of people like to read magazines. Some people like to go online and search for, articles on new trends or what's happening around the world. You may just read the newspaper every morning. That's also reading. So, what do you like to read? Ask yourself that question. Moving on to our next what kinds of books are you into? Remember, be into something means to really, really like it. So perhaps you can think about your favorite genre or genres when it comes to reading, okay? Your favorite genre when it comes to reading. Also, what would you say is the best book you've read so far? Okay, you may have read just one book or 10 books, more than that, but think about the best book, your favorite book you've read so far. Moving on to another what are you reading now? So, are you reading a book right now? What are you reading right now? Ask yourself that question and answer. All right, moving on to when. When did you finish reading your last book? Think about which book was your last book and when it was that you finished reading that book, okay? Moving on to where. Where do you purchase books? These days, of course, there are lots of bookstores, but you can also go online to buy books, to purchase books. So think about where you usually purchase or buy books. Moving on to another where. Where do you read most? Perhaps you can read at home. As I mentioned earlier today in the beginning of our program, I did mention that a lot of people like to read in bed before they go to bed, late at night perhaps. Or maybe you carry around an e-book with you all the time, or a book, a paperback book or a hardcover book, and read on the subway, on the bus, wherever, during lunchtime. You go to a cafe to read. So think about where you read most and also why. Why do you like that particular genre? So there was a question, okay, which genre do you like the most? So think about why you like that particular genre, okay, why you enjoy reading those kinds of books, and why is the book your all-time favorite? Now, as I did ask you to brainstorm about your favorite book, the book you've liked so far, now think about why that book is your all-time favorite. Okay, let's move on to another one. Why do you or don't you enjoy reading? There are plenty of people that love to read, and there are plenty of people that hate reading. So think about that question as well as we move on to our last category, how. So how long does it usually take you to finish a book? Now you start reading a book, and how long does it take you to complete the book, finish the book? Some people read very, very fast. Some people finish maybe 3 or 4 books a month, whereas a person like me would start reading and it would take about 3-4 months to actually finish reading the book. So think about how long it usually takes you to finish a book. Okay, let's move on to some more hows. How do you choose which books to read? Okay, how do you choose what or which books you want to read? And another how is, how many books do you read a year? Okay, on average. So first of all, I did mention how long does it take you to finish a book. If you are a fast reader and you really enjoy reading books, then I'm sure you read many, many books a year. If not, if you are the very opposite, you may read 1 book a year or not even a book a year. So brainstorm some cues on your own with the 5 W's and how questions. And let's begin today's lesson with our actual talk. Listen carefully.
Hey Peter.
Yeah.
Have you read the recent Dan Brown book?
Are you kidding? I'm a writer. And like most writers, I cringe at the name Dan Brown.
So you wouldn't recommend it?
Oh no, have you read any of it?
No, but I did watch the movie based on one of his novels, and I liked that one.
I'm sure the movie's fine, but his writing is a bunch of run-on sentences and poor grammatical structures, and it makes people like me cringe.
Okay, well, I'm looking for a good book to read. Do you have any recommendations?
Well, what genres do you like?
Genres. I really like autobiographies and memoirs and things like that. But if I had to choose a favorite book, I would say The Little Prince is by far my favorite book.
I can't wait till I can read that to my sons.
Yeah, it's so great because it kind of reminds you to stop and smell the roses once in a while, you know, not to live life so quickly or as a little princess, like an adult who are too busy for the simple and the beautiful things in life, right?
Yeah, it's important to take time to read instead of just surfing the internet.
Exactly. So do you have any recommendations? What genres do you like?
Well, I'm more of a historical fiction and poetry kind of guy.
Oh, okay.
As far as that goes, I could recommend The Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett, or The First Man in Rome is really nice if you like Roman history.
Okay. Maybe some memoirs or autobiographies?
As far as that goes, I don't know. I recently read Steve Jobs' memoirs.
Oh, okay. Yeah. You know, I like memoirs because it shows that every person, no matter what, has some kind of unique story or interesting life past that they had, right?
If they're famous.
That's true.
The problem is when everybody thinks they have a unique story, and then we have a bunch of boring stories out there.
That could happen too. But if you think of a good book, let me know because I'd love to get reading again.
Okay, we'll do that.
So, did you enjoy the actual talk between Peter and Rachel? Now, of course, Rachel was asking Peter if he could recommend some books to her. So I think she wants to read, but she's not quite sure about which book to read. But Peter did mention that he's kind of a historical or even a poetry kind of guy, which means he likes to read historical books and poetry. So let's take a look line by line at what Peter and Rachel were talking about. Of course, Rachel begins by asking, Peter, have you read the recent Dan Brown book? Okay, so of course, as we can see, Dan Brown is an author. He's a writer. So you can ask, have you read so-and-so's book? Meaning, have you read the book written by Dan Brown? So, say for example, if I wrote a book, you can ask, did you read the book by Jennifer Clyde, or did you read the most recent Jennifer Clyde book? Meaning the book that Jennifer Clyde wrote. Okay, he's the guy that wrote the Da Vinci Code. Okay, so, well, Peter says, are you kidding? Let's check out what he meant by that. He says, I'm a writer, And like most writers, I cringe at the name Dan Brown. Cringe is what? When you see something disgusting or scary, you're horrified, you go, ooh, that's cringing. So he says, I'm a writer, and like most writers, I cringe at the name Dan Brown. Does it sound like he likes Dan Brown or not? I don't think so. He doesn't like Dan Brown's work. That's why he says, I cringe at the name Dan Brown. Meaning, at the name, meaning when I hear the name Dan Brown. So she says, so you wouldn't recommend it, meaning it here would be the book by Dan Brown. Now Peter says, oh no, have you read any of it? Of course he can say, have you read any of them, meaning the books written by Dan Brown or the works by Dan Brown. Anyhow, let's see. Well, Rachel says no, meaning I did not read any books by Dan Brown, but I did watch the movie based on one of his novels, and I liked that one. So it's a movie based on something, based on one of his novels, based on one of his books, in other words. A movie can be based on a true story. A movie can also be based on a book or a novel. So basically she's saying, I watched a movie about Dan Brown's book, one of his novels. Now he says, I'm sure the movie is fine. I'm sure the movie's okay, watchable, it's okay. But his writing, meaning his writing style, is a bunch of run-on sentences. Run-on means what? It means to continue. Continuous sentences. A run-on sentence is a very, very long sentence where there is no period, okay, where there should be a period. So it's like maybe 4 or 5 lines long, and that's one sentence, which is a run-on sentence, okay? There's no pause, no end to it. It keeps on going. And he says, and poor grammatical structures. He's just talking about grammatical errors. So simply put, Peter's saying, I'm sure the movie that's based on one of his novels is okay. It's fine, but his writing style is not my style. There are a whole bunch of run-on sentences and poor grammar, a lot of grammatical errors. And it makes people like me cringe. So once again, he's saying, I really do not like any of Dan Brown's works. Well, she says, I'm looking for a good book to read. Do you have any recommendations? Now, he asks, what genres do you like? You can also ask, which genres do you like? The pronunciation, we did this long time ago, but just in case, one more. Genre. Genre. It's zh sound. Genre or genres. So what genres do you like? And Rachel says, I really like autobiographies. It's a bit difficult to pronounce. Autobiographies. So a biography is a story about a person, about a person's life. But if we add auto, it means that it is written by that person. So if I write a book about myself, about my life, about my past experiences, it's written by me about my life, so it would be an autobiography, okay? So Rachel likes autobiographies and memoirs. Memoirs are also story based on a person's life and experiences, but it is not necessarily written by that person. So there's a slight difference between the two. And she gives an example of her favorite book. The Little Prince is by far my favorite book, meaning, of course, without a doubt, my favorite book. Now, Peter says, I can't wait till I can read that to my sons. So he's talking about how he wishes to read The Little Prince to his little boys. Moving on. Rachel says, it's great because it reminds you to stop and smell the roses once in a while. And she says not to live life so quickly. So take a look here. To stop and smell the roses. Okay? This is an idiomatic expression. It basically means, you know, life is full of ups and downs. So stop complaining. Stop focusing on the negative things. But really try to look on the bright side, the good things in life, and not waste time complaining all the time, okay? Take it slow. Enjoy the things. Enjoy the beauty of life. That's exactly what to stop and smell the roses means, okay? Kind of pace it. Take it slow. Enjoy life. Stop complaining. All right, and then Peter says, it's important to take time, or take the time, meaning make the time, to read instead of just surfing the internet. So take time to read. Like I said, it means to make time to read or just to do it slowly. Enjoy reading, okay? Don't rush yourself, but really take the time to do something. Do it slowly. And of course, Rachel asks Peter what genres he likes. He says, I'm more of a historical fiction and poetry kind of guy. Kind of guy. He could say, I like historical fiction. I like poetry. But he's saying, I like these kind of genres by saying, I am a historical fiction and poetry kind of guy, which means he likes these genres. And he says, I could recommend these books. And he said, I recently read Steve Jobs' memoirs. So he's also talking about a memoir that he read, his most recently read book. Now, Rachel says, I like memoirs because they show that every person has some kind of unique story. Remember, a memoir is a story or book written about a person, about a person's life experiences. So she says by reading memoirs, you can see that every single person lives a unique life. And she says, well, if you can think of a good book, let me know. And of course, Peter says, okay, I'll do that. So, in other words, at the very, very end, they're talking about book recommendations. If Peter happens to think of a good book, he will recommend it to Rachel. Okay, everyone, take a listen to the talk one more time and also enjoy the subtitles.
Hey, Peter.
Yeah.
Have you read the recent Dan Brown book?
Are you kidding? I'm a writer.
Oh.
And like most writers, I cringe at the name Dan Brown.
So you wouldn't recommend it?
Oh no, have you read any of it?
No, but I did watch the movie based on one of his novels, and I liked that one.
I'm sure the movie's fine, but his writing is a bunch of run-on sentences and poor grammatical structures, and it makes people like me cringe.
Okay, well, I'm looking for a good book to read. Do you have any recommendations?
Well, what genres do you like?
Genres. I really like autobiographies and memoirs and things like that. But if I had to choose a favorite book, I would say The Little Prince is by far my favorite book.
I can't wait till I can read that to my sons.
Yeah, it's so great because it kind of reminds you to stop and smell the roses once in a while, you know, not to live life so quickly or as a little princess, like an adult who are too busy for the simple and the beautiful things in life, right?
Yeah, it's important to take time to read instead of just surfing the internet.
Exactly. So do you have any recommendations? What genres do you like?
Well, I'm more of a historical fiction and poetry kind of guy.
Oh, okay.
As far as that goes, I could recommend The Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett, or The First Men in Rome is really nice if you like Roman history.
Okay. Maybe some memoirs or autobiographies?
As far as that goes, I don't know. I recently read Steve Jobs' memoirs.
Oh, okay. Yeah. You know, I like memoirs because it shows that every person, no matter what, has some kind of unique story or interesting life past that they had, right?
If they're famous.
That's true.
The problem is when everybody thinks they have a unique story, and then we have a bunch of boring stories out there.
That could happen too. But if you think of a good book, let me know because I'd love to get reading again.
Okay, we'll do that.
Of course, we are talking about reading today, and there are tons and tons and tons of different genres when it comes to movies and also books. Now, first of all, let's check out some expressions you can use when talking about your favorite book genres or reading material. Reading material basically could be anything. As I mentioned, it can be magazines, newspapers, books, perhaps news on the net. Anything you read is called a reading material. So let's talk about your favorite book genres and reading material. Now, you can say, I've always been into. Be into something means to really, really enjoy something, to like something, right? So in this case, you can say science fiction. If you like science fiction books or sci-fi, you can say, I've always been into science fiction. Sci-fi. You can either say books or not. It can be omitted. So once again, I've always been into science fiction, or I've always been into science fiction books. Okay, let's check out some more. Non-fiction, the same goes. I've always been into non-fiction. I've always been into non-fiction books. Or another one is suspense. Suspense thrillers, they're called as well. So these are just a few genres that you can mention when talking about your favorite book genre. Another one, if you're really crazy about something, you can say, I'm obsessed with something. So I'm obsessed with thrillers, or I'm obsessed with poetry, okay? So once again, you can say I'm obsessed with thrillers or suspense thrillers, or if you like to read poems, poetry, you can say I'm crazy about or I'm obsessed with poetry as well. Let's take a look at this one. Hooked on. To be hooked on also means, right, you're hooked on something. Yeah, you're addicted to something, meaning you really, really like it. You love it. So I'm hooked on self-help, I'm hooked on travel, or I'm hooked on romance books. So in this case, you would add the books and say, I'm hooked on self-help books. Self-help books are what? Self-help. You're helping yourself. So books that you read, perhaps, that can really, really help you, perhaps, look at things differently. Books you can really learn from. They are called self-help books. So if you like those kind of books, you can say, I'm hooked on self-help books. Or if you like to travel and you like reading books on traveling, you can say travel books or romance books. These are some extra genres you can mention when talking about your favorite book genres. All right, I'm an avid reader of books about. Okay, avid reader. If you say you want to avid something, you can be an avid reader. Or perhaps some of you are avid viewers of our program. It means you are into it. You like something very much. You spend a lot of your time doing something. In other words, you're devoted. So I am a devoted reader of books about. I'm an avid reader of books about so-and-so. About self-improvement, bettering yourself, improving yourself, or finance, or even religion. There are tons of finance books out there and also books on religion. So keep in mind, I am an avid reader of books about so-and-so. Talk about the book genre or what the book is about, all right? Okay, I love to read books on, okay? Read books on blogging, cooking, or parenting. You may notice here we've got self-improvement, finance, and religion. And here we've got blogging, cooking, and parenting. So you can say books about something or books on something, okay? So I love to read books on blogging. I love to read books on cooking or even parenting. So choose which genre you like and then just put them in these blank spaces, all right? Okay, also, let's check out some ways to talk about your favorite writer or even your favorite book. I'm a big or diehard fan of Dan Brown. I've read all of his books. So big, we all know. We're not talking about the size of something. In this case, you are saying you are a huge, a great fan of so-and-so. And diehard also means a huge fan of. A very stubborn in some case, but in other words, it means huge. A great fan of so-and-so. And you can add, I've read all of his books, or I've read all of her books, meaning you really are a huge fan of that writer. Okay, here we go with one more sentence. I am a devoted follower or devoted supporter of, and then add the writer's name or the author's name. So, I am a devoted follower. I am a devoted follower or supporter of so-and-so means you really, really enjoy reading this person's books or works. Okay, let's move on. Now, blank series is by far my favorite. You can talk about series, right? There are plenty of them out there. For example, the Harry Potter series or The Hunger Games series is by far my favorite, meaning, yes, by far, without a doubt, my most favorite or my favorite book of all. So when you talk about series, keep in mind the so-and-so series or the Hunger Games series is my favorite, not are my favorite. Although it is a series is a group of all different books, okay, volumes. So we would say is by far my favorite. Okay, let's move on. Ways to describe books. Let's talk about some ways to explain or describe books. You can talk about one of your favorite books and say, it's an awe-inspiring book. Awe-inspiring. It's just a way of saying it is a great, a wonderful, so awe-inspiring book. It's a feel-good book with a happy or surprise ending. A feel-good book, what is it? A book that makes you feel good. And ending, so a happy ending, meaning the story has a very good ending, a happy ending, or a surprise ending. It's a story with a twist at the end, or simply twist, 반전, right, in Korean. So if the story has a twist at the end, 반전 at the end, you can say it's a story with a twist at the end, or simply it's a story with a twist, and that about does it. All right, here let's take a look at it's a story or book that stirs your imagination. Stir here means to, of course, evoke, okay? Evoke strong feelings. It makes you imagine things. When you read this book, you think of all different possibilities. It makes you think and imagine. You can say it stirs your imagination, or it takes you to another reality, meaning by reading this book, you can escape reality and go to another world, okay? Let's just check out two more. The book helped me find inner peace, okay? In other words, peace of mind. This is a way of saying that you're mentally and spiritually very relaxed, at peace. It makes you feel at ease and comfortable. The book helped me find inner peace. And one last one, the book provided me with food for thought. Okay, the book helped me do something. The book provided me with something, with food for thought, everyone. Food for thought is an idiomatic expression. Food for thought, what does that mean? The book feeds the mind something. In other words, if you say that something is with food for thought, it means that it gives you something to think about, okay? It makes you think about something seriously. So, food for thought, keep that in mind. It provokes thinking. It makes you think about lots of different possibilities. You would say it's food for thought. Okay, that is a wrap for today's expressions. Practice more on your own and make them yours, everyone. Now it's time for a breather, everyone. Are you ready to relax and enjoy this segment? All right, it's time for today's idiom related to today's topic, which happens to be reading. All right, here it is. An open book. An open book? Okay, the opposite of closed book. Does it mean a book is open? Well, of course, an open book has a very special meaning to it. Here is a sentence. Jessie is an open book. I know her inside out. I know her inside out, meaning I know everything about her. And Jessie's an open book. What do you think that means? Well, here is the definition. Like an open book or an open book in Korean means 다 알려져 있는, 이해하기 쉬운, 뻔한 것 또는 뻔한 사람. You know everything about that person. So it's someone or something that can be understood very, very easily or interpreted. It's very clear and obvious. So here is another sentence. My wife can read me like an open book. Or my wife reads me like an open book, so I can never lie to her. I can never lie to her because she knows me so well. She knows me inside out. I guess you can say I am a terrible liar. But if you want to say that somebody or something is very clear and obvious, try using like an open book or open book. And that is a wrap for today's idiom.
What kinds of books are you into? What genre of books are you drawn to? Talk about some of your favorite books. Why do you like them? Discuss the details of each as much as you can.
I love to read various kinds of novels, and detective story is my favorite. 백야행 is one kind of detective story that is written by Hishigano Keino, who is a Japanese writer. I don't know how to translate 백야행 into English, but its meaning is walking a white night. Its meaning is very ironic and also connotative. Maybe that's why I love this story. It is detective story but also love story. There is a girl and a boy who love each other. The boy's father raped the girl, and the boy accidentally killed his father. From that moment, the boy's life turned into black night, and the girl is living under the bright sun. It is beautiful and also a very sad story, and also a thrill and suspense story.
네, 유인영님, thank you very much for your time and effort and for telling us which book happens to be your favorite book of all time. Now let's check out what she said. I do know for a fact that she said that her favorite book happens to be a book written by a Japanese author. So let's check out some great things she said about the book and the author. She began by saying 백야행, called Into the White Night. It's the English title. Is a kind of detective story. So we can tell it is a detective story that is or was written by Hishigano Keino. Actually, I did a lot of research on this. The correct name is Higashino Keigo would be the correct name, but she did mention it slightly differently, who is a Japanese writer. So she gave us lots of information here. The name of the book, the name of the writer, and what kind of book it is, right? So it's called Into the White Night or 백야행. It's a kind of detective story. It was written by a Japanese writer named Higashino Keigo. Good job. Moving on. 백야행 is a kind of detective story by Japanese writer Higashino Keigo. Now this is a simplified version, okay? The first one was quite long. You could simplify it by taking out a few parts, okay? So just for your information, I've added that. Another great thing she said was its meaning is very ironic and also connotative. It's great that she's explaining, okay, describing the book, the good things about the book. And she says, maybe that's why I love this story. She's giving us the reason as to why she enjoys or she enjoyed this book. Let's check out some oopsies. I love to read various kind of novels, and detective story is my favorite. Kind of sounds awkward, right? So I love to read various kinds of novels, and detective story is my favorite. Let's check out how we can correct that. Here we see, I love to read various kinds of novels, and detective stories are my favorite, okay? So if you want to say that a specific genre is your favorite, you would say detective stories, love stories, thrillers are my favorite, okay? Keep that in mind. Another one, the boy's father raped the girl and the boy accidentally killed his father and so on. What I want you to pay attention to is, this is when she's talking about what happens, what the book is about. Everything is in the past, turned into black night, and the girl is living. Pay attention to the tense, okay? The tenses, they're not continuous, right? They change from one tense to another, past tense, and then she moves on to is living, okay? Always keep in mind to keep it simple, the same tense. So you should say the boy's father rapes the girl, and he accidentally kills his father. The boy's life turns into, and also the girl lives under the bright sun. So tense is very, very important, especially when you are talking about the story of a book. What happens in the book, it's, I think, in most cases, used in the past tense like this. So please do keep these tips in mind, and that is a wrap for today's actual interview. Well, did you enjoy today's lesson on reading, everyone? It may feel that it's quite simple just to talk about your favorite book genres, but it's important to be able to mention the book genre that you enjoy reading the most, and then perhaps the name of the author. Now, as in our actual interview, talk about what the book is about, usually in the past tense, everything in the past tense, and add some extra information about perhaps the author, about some other books the same writer or author has written. I think books are really good. We can benefit from books in many different ways. As I did mention, it could really help to blow away your stress. It could help you improve your thinking process. It can even help you boost your knowledge in lots of things, also improve your vocabulary, and also help you with your writing skills. Well, if you read more, of course, you'll become a better writer. So maybe the next time you get the chance, pick up a book and read. And if you are a high energy type of person, you're always very active, thinking about different things, pick up a book and sit in bed before you go to bed and really relax and enjoy the book. I'm sure you'll find that it's very soothing. Okay, that is a wrap for today's lesson, everyone. Next time, I'll be joining you with another great topic. I think it's going to be fun. We'll talk about sleeping habits. What kind of sleeping habits do you have? Do you have any bad sleep habits? Okay, we'll talk about that. So in the meantime, come visit us at www.ebse.co.kr and post your messages, comments, questions, anything you want to share by searching for Tennipo Actual Speaking. All right, that is all for today, everyone. Have a great day, and I'll catch you again soon. Bye.